Besties, besties, besties. How's it going? Going. How are you guys? Happy Monday. Welcome. Yes. Deb is here. Hi, Deb. Good to see you. Ned is here. Hello. Robin's here. Hi. Very nice. So glad that y'all are here. I have been awake since 6:30 because I wake up at 6:30 now at the beginning of the week on Monday and Tuesday to go to the gym. Except I don't go to the gym till 8. But I got my lift in. It was back day, biceps, hamstrings, back body, And I went to trim my hair today, which looks great, except for I massively fucked up back here. Like massively. And you can tell. I'm not going to show you, but I will be wearing a hat at work today. So, if anybody wants to send me tips to get a haircut as soon as possible when some of it grows back, that would be super kind of you. I mean, I could show y'all. It's the internet. This is so embarrassing. My Leo is itching. No, I'm not going to show you, actually. But today we are going to talk about Mars Venus opposition later this week. It is between Mars in Cancer and Venus in Capricorn. So that's mainly going to be the topic of conversation. As I said at the beginning, going to be a bit of a relationship chat because Mars and Venus are our most iconic relationship placements. So yeah, let's get into it. I have to collect my thoughts first. I was listening to a little bit of Jillian on love this morning to kind of get my mind right. And sure enough, as I said, a lot of times media matches up with whatever's going on in the sky. So she was definitely talking about basically when to stay and when to leave a relationship. And in this particular conversation, she was talking about when to stay in a relationship. And so, of course, the timing of this I thought was interesting because Mars and Venus are all of the planets have a role in whether we decide to stay or leave a relationship. But Mars and Venus tend to be the Venus wanting to stay, maintain the relationship, and then Mars being wanting to leave, get the fuck out of the relationship, be my own person, be my own self, or conversely, to seek out relationships or to seek out independence and autonomy. So that's a little bit about just Mars Venus dynamics in general. It can be really hard to know when to stay or when to go when you're in a relationship, especially when you're in the itchy power dynamic phase, which can last a long time if you can never figure out what your patterns are. And it can be a little bit uncomfortable and hard to see straight because you're stuck usually in your own story or your own narrative, either about relationships in general or your own story and narrative about the person that you're with and the dynamic that you're stuck in. There can be feelings of powerlessness. There can be feelings of just discomfort or distress. And sometimes it just brings up old shit, whether that's childhood shit or past relationship shit. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. But first, I want to see what y'all talking about in the chat. Because I did ask if y'all had any questions. So yeah, Sherry has a question. Also, hello, gorgeous. Sherry says, what advice would you give to A-spec people regarding relationships, including those who want to be in a queer platonic relationship? Oh. Ooh, what advice would I give to A-spec? So for those who don't know, A-spec is usually the asexual or aromantic spectrum, I believe. So asexual is in usually not feeling sexual attraction the same way that people who are usually feeling, I'll say, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert by any means on this. I just dabble because I like relationship information. But yeah, asexual being just not experiencing sexual desire or attraction the way that people usually think about it. And then aromantic, not feeling romantic desire or attraction the same way that a lot of people talk about it, usually the way it's portrayed in the media. Doesn't mean that you don't have sex or don't have romantic relationships. Just I think the feelings around them or the ideas around them, perceptions around them are different than what's kind of fed to us in I believe it's called amatonormativity, which is kind of how a lot of people think that sex and romance are just these like foregranted dispositions towards relationships, and they aren't. So yeah, for asexuality, aromanticism, I mean, I think in general, I'll say too with relationships, like what you actually, this is a good question for what I want to talk about in general today. What it is that you want and need out of companionship or relationship or whatever it is that you are seeking out. Um, Kind of really feeling grounded in that desire or in that pursuit and knowing that that is what you are looking for, that's what you want, and then communicating directly with whoever it is you're trying to get involved with what it is that you want, what it is that you're looking for in your connection with this other person. So if you have boundaries around certain things that you do and don't want to receive and do and don't want to give, make that known up front so everybody knows what they're signing up for, and so that you um, know how what you are bringing to the relationship as well as what the other person can expect, and vice versa. Always talk about it. And for queer platonic relationships, I would say, like, again, very clear, have a very clear definition of what that is for you. That way, whenever you're trying to communicate that to somebody else, you basically know what it is that you want, what it is that they're getting into, what it is that you are expecting from them and from the relationship dynamic, just so everyone's on the same page. So that's what I would say about that. If that's unclear, let me know. Um, I feel like that's usually the case for just relationships in general, but yeah, like talk about it. Know what it is that you want, or at least have an idea of what it is that you want, and let the other person know what you're thinking, what you're interested in, what you're seeking out, so that y'all can be on the same page and co-create the vibe. That's my expert opinion. um Today was back day for Netta 2. Holla, yes. I'm not very helpful when it comes to haircuts. That's why I was bald for so long. I kept messing up. It was not a choice. Yeah, the issue was I was just trying to do a little trim on the sides like I always do when I can't go to the barber shop because the barber that I like to see is expensive. And the guard for the clipper came off and I didn't realize it, and just a whole like section in the back of my head. So I'm glad that it's in the back of my head because I have done that in the front once. It wasn't as noticeable, but it has happened. So just gonna hope that people don't notice and aren't paying that much attention to me and all of my air placements. Mercy is correct. I did also shave the beard a little bit. I'm leaving some facial hair. I'm just gonna play with some different things and see what's going on, right? Mercury retrograde got my ass, unfortunately. Hey Olivia, good to see you here. I'm trying to get my mind right in the relationship area right now. Mine is in a weird space and going through a major transition. Yeah, life changes are tough too for relationships. So, I mean, it sounds like, yeah, that you guys are feeling this opposition a little bit already. I believe the opposition, well, I don't believe the opposition is December 12th, which I think is this Thursday. So I'm going to get into that as well. But yeah, if you're feeling tension in your relationships, whether those are romantic, friendship, platonic, working relationships, whoever it is that you're in some sort of community or dynamic with, feeling a little push and pull, a little stay, a little go, a little uncertain or uncomfortable, or control and power dynamics, all that type of stuff is definitely the topic of conversation today. Hey, Desiree. Oh, the homies are here. Eric and Richie. I almost called you Richard because I'm reading your name. But hey, you guys. Hello, hello. Thank you, Winter. That was very helpful. And yes, your descriptions for asexuality and aromanticism was correct. Nice. I try to be a good student. Hey, Sam. Good afternoon. My neuropsych friend Deb says, because I'm a neuropsych, I wonder about how ASPEC flows with or against ADHD versus autism neurologies. Interesting. I have seen some overlap for sure. Have we been tired? A little bit. It's come and goes. I'm in a really strong, solid routine right now that feels really good for me. So Surprisingly, I've been waking up early and I feel good. I do get tired earlier, which I don't mind because we need to slow down a little bit in the winter times. It gets dark so early that I'm asleep. I'm not asleep, but I'm falling asleep on the couch like an old man by 9 o'clock. So if you've been feeling that way, it's normal. Lean into it. Get your rest. The push and pull is so real. Absolutely, yes. As an Aries baby, or as an Aries rising, it's more of a baby. I don't give a fuck. I will leave and trying to resist that inclination. Perfect. Well, that's absolutely what we're talking about today. Hey, Jem. Good to see you. Okay. So, first of all, let's talk about the technical astrology of it all. A few things that you need to know. If you have an astrotherapy journal, it only started in May, so this first one's not going to be interesting. But if you have been keeping track of your astrotherapy journal and journaling, three different transits to look at regarding this week's Venus Mars opposition, since this is the main aspect this week. The first one, this Mars Venus cycle would have started February 22nd at 12 degrees Capricorn, which is relevant to this week's opposition. So, what was going on for you back in February, mid to late February? That would have been when this Mars Venus conjunction started, and therefore the cycle that is leading up to this opposition. The second aspect, which is probably in your astrotherapy journal, is the Venus square Mars aspect that would have gone exact on August 22nd. And that was between 27 degrees Leo and 27 degrees of Taurus. So we went from cardinal signs to a fixed sign square, and now we're back to cardinal signs, which I think is pretty interesting. Part of the reason for that is because Mars is now officially stationary retrograde, which, if you lived through last week, was a hot fucking mess. But now we're here. We survived. Congratulations to everyone else along with me who is in a Mars ruled year. We're here. We're queer. We're into it. Also, because Venus is moving a little bit faster as she is ahead of the rest of the planets, about to station retrograde in Pisces early next year. That is in the 2025 Sidereal Astrology iCals that are available in my shop right now. If you haven't gotten them just yet and you want to get the aspects directly to your phone, you can grab both the lunar transits and the aspects that I discuss on our weekly lives in my shop right now. It's about $7 for both. They may load in Central Standard Time, so just keep that in mind. I have yet to figure out how to get it in Universal Time, but I think Astro Gold updated to Universal Time, so that error should be fixed. But if it's not, I apologize. Still working it out, but you can get the transits to your phone. Go for it. You'll at least know what day things are happening if you don't know the exact time. It's so helpful. Buy it. Yes, thank you for the shout out because it is super convenient. That's a lot of times what I use, especially if you're a person who doesn't know how to look at the charts. Just get the iCals. It makes your life a million times easier. There's also a post on my Patreon called something about the most popular, not popular, the most meaningful transits of 2025. I forget what that one's called, but major transits for 2025 is also a post for my paid subscribers on Patreon, and it lists out all of the significant transits and aspects of 2025. That also has a link to go to my shop as well. So that's been up since September. I was on top of my shit this year. So please go check that out as well, just to see what 2025 has in store for us and how this moment connects to what is to come. All right. So that was the second aspect. And then that leads us up to now. So we have February 22nd, August 22nd, and then December 12th this week for the Venus Mars opposition between Mars in Cancer and Venus in Capricorn. What are y'all saying over here? I never remember what I was doing or feeling in the past, which is why I'm trying to journal more regularly. Yeah, same here. And another thing that helps, looking through your camera rolls, looking through your text messages, looking through your emails, whatever things that you use that you can access the date and time kind of thing, super helpful. Uh Y'all were going through it in February. Listen, child, me too, baby. Me too. It's been a long year. Like, it always feels like the year has gone by fast, but it has been quite long. Oh man, February was a month into your first lesbian relationship. Congratulations. With a damn Venusian of all things, child. Listen. February 23rd was the day a bunch of my friends held an intervention at my house, which was just them backing me into a corner and forcing me to go to a mental hospital. Ghetto, ghetto. Um, Olivia had a breakup at the end of February. Yeah, I think I also went through a breakup. Was that this year? That seems like it was last year, but I guess it was this year. Also had a breakup end of February, beginning of March. Actually, it was a couple of days after our anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. So, wow. Yeah. And now we're here. My, how the times have changed. February, I met my now ex-girlfriend and we started the issues leading up to the breakup right around August 22nd. Astrology is real. Okay. Astrology is real. Crazy, ghetto, broke, and busted. Period. Okay. All right. So the astrology. Let's talk about how did I want to set this up? Okay, so we talk about how oppositions aren't really opposite. They are two sides of the same coin. They are two different tools trying to get the same job done. And in this case, in cardinal signs, the job we are trying to get done is control and regulation. Usually for cardinal signs, that is controlling something outside of you in order to regulate your emotions on the inside. What do transits mean? Transits is basically like the same idea of transit, like public transit, right? You get on a bus, you get on a car, you get on a plane, whatever, to go somewhere else. Transits just means planets are moving around. Um, Transits can be just, yeah, it's just planets moving around, basically moving through a sign. We would say a planet is transiting through the sign of whatever. Um, Aspects are whenever two planets are having communications with each other. It's a lot of geometry, basically. But an aspect would be whenever two planets are exactly um a certain degree or angle, having a certain degree angle interaction with each other. It's something I could tell you about better visually, but I'm not going to get too much into that today. I am going to talk about aspects though, because I had an interesting thought this week that I thought y'all might be interested in. And yes, if you haven't already liked the stream, please do so. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, although I know most of you guys have your notifications on because you're real ones. So, yes. What was I saying? Oppositions. So the current opposition, we only have two cardinal signs, which are Cancer, Capricorn, occupied right now between Mars and Venus, which means they are just locked in this opposition with each other. There's no Aries, there's no Libra to break it up. So they are just ping-ponging back and forth, which means we are experiencing some kind of internal conflict that feels like being pulled in two opposite directions, but it's really trying to figure out how much of which tool or planetary gift or wound that we're experiencing, whatever that is, we're trying to figure out just how much of each of those things do we need to get this job, this theme of control and self regulation accomplished. Like I said, hey Samaje, my love. Like I said, Mars is interested in cutting and running, maintaining their individualism, their autonomy. Venus is trying to connect, come together, maintain the relationship. So when you're in a committed relationship of any kind, whether that is, like I said, family or romantic or whatsoever, you are probably experiencing some amount of wanting to go towards the relationship, maybe repair things, maybe resolve things, but also feeling a desire to maybe just not do it at all, to stay alone, to end things, to just get the fuck out. Um, or maybe you're resisting even getting into a relationship because something about it is scary. And I do tend to find these both of these planets to be uncomfortable because it is already in my business. It is because of society and the world that we live in, and all of the traumas of being alive, whether we had a traumatic society or not, there's always some part of us that is trying to maintain our sense of self as an individual, and that is trying to maintain the connection with others because we need to be attached in some kind of a way in order to survive. That is like our birthright. Whenever you're a baby, if somebody were to detach from you, set you down on the street, and never come back and find you, you would die. And a big part of our nervous systems know that. And so there's always a part of us that is like, I need this relationship to last. I need it to be sustainable. And then there's always a part of us that's like, but if I stay here, um, for some reason I might not get to be myself. I don't get to do what I want to do. I have to be accountable to other people. there's just a lot of internal conflict, right? Hold on one second. I forgot to plug my laptop in. And this is just like classic relationship stuff. But with cardinal signs in particular, again, there is this hyped up experience of neglect as the underlying thing. Neglect in this case can be, I'm going to say, has a lot to do with not being seen or known, and I'll explain why a little bit later. But neglect can be not being seen or known. It can be not getting what it is that you need or desire. It can be not being acknowledged in the ways you want to be acknowledged. It can be anything that you just aren't getting that you really need. And then there's also the other side of wanting to feel a sense of power and control in your circumstances or in your relationship. And I will give you all a hint for any relationship issue that you may be having or that may come up in the future. The person, and don't weaponize this, don't manipulate your relationships with this information. This is just information. The person who occupies a little bit more of the Mars position in the relationship, the one who is threatening to leave or threatening the relationship in some kind of a way, or even suggesting that things might not be working out, the person who wants to not be in the relationship has all of the power, and the person who wants to maintain the relationship is usually the one who feels powerless. Okay. So whenever you think about this dynamic with Mars and Venus in Cancer and Capricorn right now, Mars is in the Capricorn, in the Cancer position that says, I want to do what I want to do based on how I feel in this moment. And so if how I feel in this moment is that I want to leave, I'm going to do that. Leaves the Venus person, the Venus and Capricorn person, or just Venus and Capricorn feeling like, well, I just have to conform to that, I guess, because there's nothing I can do about it. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I just must not be enough for you in some kind of a way. I'm not doing enough. I'm not being enough. I am not what you want. And can feel a sense of powerless and hopelessness that then throws the whole relationship into this chaos because the Mars person is holding all of the power and the control, and the Venus person feels like they kind of they have to appease, they have to fawn, they have to please, they have to do something to kind of win back the Mars person. And that's just how it goes. And like Jim is saying, this can be weaponized because Venus, usually one of the wounds or wounding experiences for Venus is coercion. It can be well, dependence isn't really the wound, but it's shit, I can't remember the wound, but the feeling of dependence. I really depend, again, because if you detach from me, I might die, right? That's at the heart of this. The Mars person, it's not always conscious that they know this. This is not like, I'm not assigning like a victim villain thing to this. It's just the nature of power dynamics and relationships. So if we are cutting and running based on how we feel in the moment, especially if we're trying to avoid discomfort, which I think is something symbolized by Mars in Cancer, then yeah, the Venus person, the Venus part of the dynamic is just kind of suffering, trying to figure out how to work with the situation as it exists and figuring out how to be enough. So the experience of feeling like you're not enough might be the one that you resonate with more. And the feeling of getting the fuck out because this doesn't feel good anymore might be the one you resonate with more. Neither of these are wrong. It's just the nature of the aspect, right? And just the nature of relationships. So how do we get out of this dynamic? Well, that's where I want to talk about a little just astro technical discussion is the way that T-squares work. So T-squares literally look like right triangles, and I will try to show you here on my laptop, on my iPad, if you can see it. So on here we have this opposition situation going on, which is between Venus over here and Mars over here. So this is the opposition. They're just straight up opposed each other. So ignore all these other lines for the moment. Mars and Venus are in their opposition. There's nothing over here and there's nothing over here to break up this opposition. So it's just back and forth. Stay, should I go? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I stay? Should I go? But if you look at the fixed signs in the sky, that's where we get out of, that's kind of how we're going to have to get out of this situation. So just for example, you can see Jupiter down here in Taurus and then Mercury up here in Scorpio. They're in an opposition as well, noted by this red line here in the center. What's breaking up this opposition, which we've been talking about, we still have one more of those to go, oppositions between Mercury and Jupiter, is Saturn over here in Aquarius. So this right angle part, these are both squares, and that means Saturn in Aquarius actually has all of the power to break up this opposition. So that's a T square, right? Um, so the thing about T squares, I have one in my natal chart as well between fixed signs, is that whatever planet is on the apex being where both of those, where that kind of right triangle point is, where I mentioned Saturn was just now, that's called the apex. That planet has all of the power because of the way that squares work. It's always the sign before that ends up kind of overcoming another planet, right? And I know this is going to be really technical. If you need to watch this section over and over again, please feel free to do so. But basically, the way that this works is focus. Saturn has more power because Saturn overcomes Mercury, but Jupiter actually overcomes Saturn. So the fact that this is Saturn in Aquarius over here versus maybe like something over here in Leo, the balance would be tipped more in Leo's favor in that case, because the Mercury is going to overcome Leo, then Leo is going to overcome Jupiter over here in Taurus, right? So that's more or less the point, but for the astro nerds, you get what I'm saying, right? So between the opposition between basically the sun and Mercury versus Jupiter and Taurus, Saturn in Aquarius breaks up that opposition, and it leans Saturn in the sense that self-determination, and Saturn themes around being dismissed, or your self-concept, the idea that you have of yourself, self-determination, like I said, but also being dismissed or ignored, or dissociation, like leaving your body completely or leaving your emotions out of it completely. That's the tool that helps to basically decide, to more or less decide which side of the opposition is going to be the tool that works best for you. And so because of that whole thing I was talking about, a planet having more power than the one in front of it, um the Venus side of everything is kind of what we're leaning into a little bit more. So how can I explain that in a way without the visuals so that you guys understand? So who would have the most leverage in a T square with Saturn and Mars? I mean, it depends on the signs. So really the aspect of a T square is more relevant, is more sign based than it is planet based, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of nuances to this that I'm not covering, but let me see. How do I want to explain this? So why am I talking about fixed signs in the first place? Well, if you remember from previous lives, um, Mars in Cancer is the ruler of Mercury in Scorpio, because Scorpio is a Mars ruled sign. And then Venus in Capricorn is responsible for Jupiter in Taurus, because Taurus is a Venus ruled sign. So when you can't figure out where to go with the opposition between Mars and Venus, you look to their rulers, and that's going to introduce you into this whole fixed sign conversation. And whenever you're shifting from cardinal to fixed, that's going to tell us something about what control and regulation we're trying to actually get, because it's not just control and regulation for the sake of control and regulation. In this case, the opposition is serving the purpose of self-preservation in the sense of identity. So this is kind of just a means to figure out this T square shit going on with fixed signs. Does that kind of make sense? And I'll answer your questions in just a second, but I want to try to lay this out. So the fixed sign conversation is about identity. So what are we trying to gain control and regulation over? Our identity and how we're perceived by other people, right? And the struggle between Mars and Venus in this case is like, okay, being in relationship with people who don't see me versus being in relationships with people who do. What does that look like? How do I know the difference? How do I know, like I said earlier, that I am being seen and known in a relationship? And then based on that information, do I need to stay in these relationships and maintain them, or do I need to leave them, or do I need to do a secret third thing that's not really leaving or going, but establishing maybe more boundaries, right? So that I can maintain my sense of self, hence the whole self-preservation thing. Hey Jada, welcome in. Good to see you. So yeah, so with that information, we go back to the whole T square thing, right? So why does Saturn and Aquarius matter so much between this opposition between now Scorpio and Taurus? Because we're expanding. So stay with me. Like we said before, the opposition between Mercury and Jupiter in Taurus and Scorpio is um being in relationships with people who are like me versus being myself and trying to express my differences and still be in relationships. So you see how that's kind of tricky and how it's another like subset of what Mars and Venus are trying to do. Mercury and Scorpio, like we said, expressing your authentic differences, especially whenever it comes to your differences in your emotions. And then Jupiter and Taurus as the current culture and societal norms of what relationships are supposed to be and who is supposed to be, who we're supposed to be in relationship with based on a shared sense of self and identity. Okay. So I'm different, but I want to be in relationship is like the gist of all of this. So if we're expanding out into this T square, this fixed sign T square with Saturn in Aquarius, basically the reason why Saturn in Aquarius has so much power is not just because it's in its own sign, but because of its position in the sky with all of these other planets and how the way that we answer this question, who do I be in relationships with, is based on how you see yourself and the concept of yourself that you have in your own mind, the image of yourself that you have in your own mind, the way that you talk about yourself, the language and the names that you give yourself, the identities that you possess that are maybe not visible to everyone else but have to be explained to other people. See where I'm going with this? So that's where Mercury comes in because Saturn is in a position where, I might have described that T square the wrong way earlier, but Saturn is in a position where Mercury actually in Scorpio is saying like, look, people can see us actually. We're visible. They're not going to automatically understand or agree with who we are by the language that we use because for whatever reason they may not be aware of the language that we're using, they may not be educated about it, or they're just resisting it because it goes against what they've been told a person is. So obviously trans people are a great example of this, right? Since we are the people who are in the bullseye target for fascism right now. A lot of people reject the understanding of transness because it doesn't fit with their understanding of what a person is. They think a person is girl or boy, and that's it. They think a person is girl or boy, and that's it. And therefore, anything that does not fit into this concept that I have of what a person is, I can't be in relationship with. In fact, they shouldn't be allowed to exist. What the fuck are we doing? These people are mentally ill. They're going to harm the children, so on and so forth, all these lies. So when a trans person like myself is trying to say express the experience that I'm having to my family members, right? And I have a personal example for this I'll get into, but it's like it's basically going to seem like I'm speaking a foreign language. Like what is transgender? What is non-binary? What is a pronoun? Like nobody ever took English class and don't know that pronouns are just descriptors of nouns. um but people are going to act like you're speaking a foreign language. They're going to reject whatever it is that you're saying and not internalize that information because it, in a roundabout way, not only disrupts their concept of what a person is, like I said, but also their concept of who they are and what they have the possibility or potential to be themselves. So it's not just with gender. This also goes with sexuality, right? Gay, straight, bisexual, pansexual, like we were talking about earlier, asexual or aromantic. And just the fact that I, had to explain to everyone, oh yeah, it's possible to be asexual and still have sexual relationship. People are like, what? Those things don't go together. Doesn't matter what you think. People are allowed to do whatever they want to do and define themselves however they want to define themselves. So, one of the things to kind of tie this all back together, one of the reasons why Venus or rather, excuse me, let me back up. One of the reasons why Saturn in Aquarius is so important in this Mars Venus dynamic is because Saturn in Aquarius is responsible for Venus in Capricorn. Why? Because Capricorn is a Saturn ruled sign. See what I did there? But the problem with with Capricorn and Aquarius is that even though they're both Saturn ruled signs, they sit right next to each other in the zodiac, which means they are the least like each other. Saturn as Capricorn is operating in the material world in the sense of what you can see, touch, feel, smell, interact with in the physical sense. Whereas Aquarius, Saturn, when it's in Aquarius, is operating in the conceptual world or the idealized world, the theoretical world of maybe not something that you can see or directly interact with your senses, but what you can speak about, what you can talk about, what you basically rely on language to bring it to life or bring it into existence because it's going to contradict probably whatever's going on in the material sense. Right? And there's a lot of freedom and a lot of liberation that comes with air, which Aquarius is an air sign. But then there's also a lot of people just dismissing or again denying, ignoring, just basically saying like that's not real. That's not a real thing. We don't have evidence for it. I can't see it. I can't engage with it. I can't touch it. So it's not real. And that's really a struggle that Aquarius and Capricorn have with each other. So if you're a person like me and you got both of these motherfuckers in your chart, there's a part of you that says, well, this is what it is in the realistic sense, in the reality sense, because I can see it, I can feel it, I can touch it. But also I have this idea in my head about not only what it actually is, but what it could be, what's possible. It expands on material reality, right? So going back to Venus and Capricorn, then what I said earlier about one of the needs that we are trying to get met in relationships is to be seen and to be known, is because Saturn in Aquarius is trying to help us be more ourselves the way that we want to be, regardless of how other people perceive us, which kind of ties into the whole Leo Aquarius opposition. You know what I'm saying? So, as much as we have all these oppositions going on, Aquarius breaks it up by saying, look, I know all of these earth and water signs are trying to talk about feelings and emotions and bodies and body parts and whatever else. And the earth signs are trying to be logical and rational and 1+1 = 2. This is how things are. This is what I can see, what I'm working with. But air says, look, there's another option. There's another way out. And this is hard. So I'm going to pause there. I want to see what y'all are saying in the chat. Hey, Elizabeth, welcome in. We're talking about the Mars Venus opposition this Thursday. I saw a lot of you guys are agreeing, and I know y'all are having some side convo chat too. So what if you have a Mars Venus first house? So if you're saying that you have Mars and Venus in the first house, you're probably a person who identifies with both Mars and Venus, and in fact probably gets treated a lot of ways as Mars and Venus, which feels like a lot of an internal contradiction again of like what relationships are to you, the role that you play in them, and how you show up in them, and also like who you are as an individual and who you are outside of relationships. They are both operating under the same tool, the same task, the same like I don't know, theme based on the zodiac sign in your first house, but they are trying to accomplish two different goals, one of them being connection, one of them being autonomy. So sometimes they're doing the same thing. They go about achieving connection and autonomy the same way, but they can also contradict each other because you're trying to use again the same set of tools to do different jobs. So how does it figure in romantic relationships? Well, all I can say is if you are dating somebody who has a placement in the sign of your first house, they're probably triggering that internal conflict for you in the relationship. And you'll probably feel within yourself the desire to stay and go a lot in general. And it's kind of like you basically, this is kind of esoteric, but you're kind of breaking a maybe generational pattern of how to behave in relationships and also how to maintain your sense of self in relationships based on how you decide to navigate relationships moving forward. So you kind of have the power to decide for yourself just um how much you want to become one in a relationship versus like maintain your sense of self in a relationship. But yeah, I would actually be very curious what your familial relationship dynamics are like what your mother and father were like, or your grandparents were like on both sides, and how far back those patterns go, if there's a pattern there. But that's just kind of what I'm thinking off the top of my head. So a T square with Saturn and Mars, you would need a third planet, basically. So that's what I'm asking. Like, it's between Aquarius and Leo, which I know you and I both have the same Mars Saturn opposition between Aquarius and Leo. If I remember your chart correctly, you have Venus in Taurus. So your T square leans Venus because you have Venus in Taurus. My T square leans Scorpio because I have Venus and Jupiter in Scorpio. So Venus has a little bit of the upper hand in your situation. Scorpio has the upper hand in mine. So whichever one is, again, like I said, on that right angle triangle point of the T square that has two squares from both directions, that planet basically determines how the opposition wants to function. Saturn always giving us unprecedented teas. Be eat me up for real. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Um Damn, that's on point. I'm watching this as I sit in my childhood home where I have felt so not included or like I belong for a long time. Wow. Wow, yeah, for sure. This explains why words have been so hard for me. Mercury is literally opposing my natal. Yes, it's also on top of your Jupiter as well, friend. Okay, clock it. Get out of my house. When I came out as queer to my folks, I spent 30 minutes explaining what queer is, how queer is different from trans, how queer doesn't mean that you don't want kids. Yes, exactly. It's like the quote unpopular or non-traditional thing, Scorpio. So talking about it is like disrupting people's whole schema for how the world works, their whole framework for how the world is supposed to work. Like, no, it's supposed to be as per the American dream: white picket fence, husband, wife, two kids, and a dog. So anything that veers from that in the Taurus sense as like the social norm status quo is going to be seen as queer, is going to be seen as different, and it falls into the Scorpio category. And then trying to explain that to other people via this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio is like speaking Chinese to a bunch of people who speak English. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not real. um okay, so yes. Let me see what y'all talking about. Great explanation. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Me and my Capricorn son Granny were best friends, but we argued a lot because we were so different, for sure. Hey, I got Capricorn, Sun, and Mercury right here, and I'd be beating my own ass about my tunnel vision of what things are and how things work. It can be very stubborn sometimes when it comes to changing my mind. But once I decide to change my mind via Saturn and Aquarius, then nobody can tell me otherwise. I'm an Aquarius moon, hence the correlation. Yes. Okay, y'all are talking about coming out. So yeah, actually great transition to bring this a little bit more into like down to earth terms, because I only got like 15-ish minutes left. So, for example, the way that I, in a Mars ruled year, Scorpio ruled year at that, have been experiencing this opposition, starting with Thanksgiving and basically every year around this time, is that I I basically started transitioning and changing my appearance late 2020. So literally like January 2020 on my 25th birthday, I was as femme as I could be and had no thoughts of being any other genders at the time. And then come the middle of the year, I started feeling like, what if what if I just started to explore a little bit with my appearance and my gender? And a lot of that started with like internalized homophobia and unpacking that, and then it led to unpacking some internalized transphobia by 2022. And then now I'm here and I'm on testosterone and I'm almost like cis passing for the most part, other than being 5'5". So My family, I haven't seen my extended family, beyond my aunt and my grandma, I haven't seen since 2019. We had a big family gathering around Christmas like we always do. And like my extended family is large in the sense on my mom's side, in the sense that my grandmother, my mom's mom, has 9 brothers and sisters. Most of them are sisters. I believe 7 of them are sisters. And so, there's a lot of fucking people on that side of the family, and so when we have gatherings, there's a lot of them, and I really used to enjoy that when I was younger, and then kind of as I got older, and then some of my own opinions started entering the chat, especially my queerness, because I've been out as like some version of queer since I was 12 years old. So new to this. I mean, not new to this, but true to this. But when it comes to gender, like I never really came out to my extended family even about being queer. So now to just like pop up after 4 years, a man is kind of a lot to me. But at the same time, I'm pretty comfortable at this point. I've been on T for like a year and a half at this point. I've been out, publicly or whatever. Um, I feel pretty much comfortable with who I am. And at the same time, like going into that situation of just seeing my whole family feels intimidating, for a number of reasons, and it's kind of layered, right? Part of it is popping up as a man when they haven't seen me in general in the last few years, other than like on social media and stuff, of course. But they haven't seen me in person, and I haven't officially come out and been like, "Hey, family, like I'm a guy now. Address me as he, him," so on and so forth. A lot of them are very religious, and that just feels like a conversation that is too big for me to handle on my own. The other part of it that adds on to it is me being the only person who's still COVID cautious, the only person who's still masking, the only person who still thinks COVID is a thing. So I have a lot of kind of Aquarius Scorpio stuff that I'm bringing into a situation that nobody else agrees with me with, and I'd be the only person really like advocating for that thing. So it's like odd one out, black sheep times 1,000, at least how it feels to me. And so that has led me to feel like, yeah, I'm not going. I'll just be alone. So I'm on the Mars side. Um, but what that's kind of contributing to this issue is that one, I'm not showing myself, I'm not showing up for myself, I'm not advocating for myself, I'm not taking up space in my family emotionally or physically. I'm just kind of disappearing. I'm like the lost cousin that nobody understands why I don't come around. And again, a lot of my resistance to doing that and a lot of my own wounds are around like, I worry I won't be believed, I won't be understood, I'll be seen as crazy. And then, I'll have to defend myself and be the only person there defending myself. And that just feels like a lot. Um, but at the same time, I miss them. Like I want them to see who I am now. I want to be able to be myself around them. And I just like I enjoy being around them, even though we have our differences. Like I care about these people. It sucks that I haven't seen them in years. But with Saturn and Aquarius kind of being the thing that's determining it all, my biggest priority right now is I don't want to go into that situation feeling like one, nobody has my back, two, that nobody really understands me and that nobody really sees and knows me. Because if I go into that situation and I feel like kind of the loner black sheep situation, that's going to put me in a defensive posture. That's going to lead to really shitty communication. That's going to lead to me feeling very attacked when maybe people are just trying to ask questions and be curious, thinking about Mercury and Scorpio. It's going to make me feel like I have to be more defensive about myself, which can come off mean sometimes or terse or, whatever. It's going to put me in that Scorpio defensive posture that's not very nice and cute and sweet and fun and comfortable for everybody. It's going to blow up everybody's feelings, mine included. So, this is another way that the Mars person kind of has a lot of power in the situation, because if I enter the room and don't even say anything, everyone's going to feel away just because I'm in the room in a mask and a man. When I was previously this girl with long hair and like, showing skin half the time when I was out. So, that being said, I have realized that what's been bothering me about this whole situation, it's not even just about COVID, but it is about, because COVID's really the thing that keeps me from going. If COVID wasn't a thing, I probably would have sucked it up and gone last year at the very least, right? But because COVID is a thing, it adds on this extra layer that people are just going to think that they're going to think that I'm living in a completely different reality, basically, as I spoke about before. But there's also this added layer of Like, nobody respects my pronouns, which is not about pronouns. It's about, like, you seeing me the way that I see myself, and you, um, basically sharing reality with me that this is the person that I am, and that you, even if you don't agree, you understand and you see who I am, where I'm coming from, and you respect that, right? And you keep the rest of your shitty opinions to yourself because I don't care. It's not going to change my mind. But if I'm going into that situation knowing that, like, my parents still don't respect my pronouns, they still don't, like, haven't fully come to terms with me transitioning, like my cousins probably do, but they're also on a different page of, with COVID and everything else. It's like that, along with my history of being anxious and whatever else, being an astrologer in a Christian family, like all this other stuff, I need to know that I at least got maybe 2 people in my corner, but at the very least 1 person in my corner to go up against the 20 or 30 family members that I would be speaking to. And it's not that I'm automatically assuming that they're going to attack me. I'm automatically assuming that they won't understand because that's a lot of my own personal narrative, right? There's no advocates for you, right? So it's like I can have all the confidence in the world and security in who I am when I'm by myself, but when I'm in relationship with other people, everything gets kind of hectic. So I imagine that you all are experiencing some version of this. You may not be trans or queer, but you also sounds like a lot of you are. But it sounds like, um, the internal conflict of, like, wanting to be in relationship versus wanting to just be alone, or wanting to belong to a group, or wanting to maintain your individual sense of self, wanting to be seen as the person that you say you are versus battling the image that everybody else has of you in their minds. All of these things are basically tied up or wrapped up in this opposition between Venus in Capricorn and Mars in Cancer. Because ultimately, doing conflict is uncomfortable. And Mars in Cancer doesn't really want to be uncomfortable. Jupiter in Taurus doesn't really want to be uncomfortable. But Aquarius and Scorpio, the bitches are always uncomfortable. So they're kind of like par for the course. I guess this is just another year where I will be in my discomfort of my loneliness and invisibility. What is the solution? And what is it that we're really trying to control again in this dynamic between Mars and Venus? It is trying to get the need met, like I said, of being seen and being known and being understood. That kind of goes for all of the signs, but I think we're trying to maintain some sense of control over who we are and how we see ourselves. And therefore, there's something about, like, something that I think Capricorn really struggles with, and even Cancer in its own ways. I think both of them kind of struggle with actually knowing what it is that they need or what they want or what they desire, especially when what you're battling is what, again, extrapolating to Taurus and Scorpio, what society is telling you you should want and need and desire versus what your physical body is trying to tell you that you need and want and desire as the individual person that you are. And then I think going back out to Saturn in Aquarius again says you get to decide, sort of, right? Like, you do have your human fundamental needs, like I said, of being seen, safe, seen, soothed, and supported slash challenged, which comes from my relationship course. But there's also, you know, your unique needs along with that. Like, me wanting to be called he and him whenever you're speaking about me in third person or whatever, when you're describing me to other people, or wanting to be seen as a man, because I literally look like one at this point. If what I think is a man literally look like one at this point, so it's kind of silly. I saw somebody caption a video, another trans guy caption a picture of himself, and he said, "The face that only a mother could she her," which I was like, "Yo, literally." Relatable. But yeah, it's like, can you, the question around it is like, whatever your relationship situation is, the question is, can you see me and what it is that I need from you outside of whatever image that you are seeing of me and whatever story that you're projecting onto me and whatever ideas and beliefs that you're projecting onto me that I don't identify with? Like, can you see me through all of that? Can you see me through your projections, basically? Um And it's also asking you if you can see them through your projections, which is the part a lot of us don't like to talk about, because then we have to be accountable for our own projections and our own narratives and our own stories that we tell ourselves about what we're experiencing that may or may not be fully rooted in reality. And it may be rooted in our past experiences. They usually are rooted in our past experiences. And it's really hard to break out of that because, again, Jupiter, your Jupiter placement in your chart wants to keep you safe. It says, hey, I know what this is. I've been there. I've done that shit before. I ain't doing that again. I don't want to do that again. So then Mars hops in and says, you don't want to do this again? Okay, period. We don't have to. Let's not. Let's go somewhere else and do whatever we want to do. But in this particular case, I do think that Mercury retrograde, as kind of doing Mars's bidding right now, is saying, how can I? Oh, I pulled 2 cards before this, and I got Ace of Swords and Ace of Swords and Knight of Swords, and I was trying to figure out, like, how does that relate to anything that I'm thinking of right now? And then it just came to me, like, well, yeah, because the whole Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde thing is like advocating for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're saying the unpopular thing, even when you're saying the thing that everybody else refuses to understand. But it's not just talking at people, which I think will get interesting once planets move into Sagittarius. But it's not just talking at people, and it's not just speaking from that defensive place again, but it's really again, authentic emotional expression. How can I say what I'm experiencing knowing that someone else is not going to get it, is not going to understand, and like, what do I need in order to get that message across effectively? What do I need in order to feel safe enough to actually like explain myself? What do I need? What do we need in order to be able to hear each other, um, hear what each other is saying and show up for each other in the way that each other needs? I feel like I had another landing point. Now I don't remember what it was. I think back to the control and regulation part of it. It's like, yeah, that's what it was. The control and regulation part of it between Cancer and Capricorn, like we talked about last week, is having to do the thing that you don't want to do because it doesn't feel good, but you're an adult, so you got to do the thing that you don't want to do. Shout out to HP for that word earlier this week. Thanks, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Um, um, the control and regulation piece, again, going back to cardinal signs, is a lot of times cardinal signs are taking action again in order to resolve whatever internal discomfort they're experiencing, and at the same time won't take action because they don't want to feel that internal sense of discomfort, whether it's from conflict or just being denied or being told no, or whatever worst case scenario it is that you are imagining would be the consequence of engaging in conflict with someone else or engaging your differences with someone else. Whatever it is that you're imagining is the worst case scenario of that, when it's not death. And even with death, right, if we go to the extreme, it's because you don't want to feel something that comes with that experience. So I don't want to feel rejection from my family, right? I don't want to feel gaslit. I don't want to feel humiliated. I don't want to feel dismissed, or I don't want to feel small. I want to feel like cared for and understood and received and valued and appreciated and all of those things. So instead of avoiding the discomfort of what you don't want to feel, how can you best set yourself up for how you do want to feel, and use how you do want to feel as kind of the motivation for how you structure your argument or structure the conversation, or um, how you set up safeguards and boundaries for the relationship or for the conversation or whatever it is, or um, just like, how do you set yourself up for what you do want to feel, what you do want to gain, what you do want to be the outcome, and then mentally prepare yourself for it to not go that way, of course, because the reality is sometimes shit doesn't work out the way that we want. But you're more likely to get through to people, or at the very least get your message across, if you are coming from that place that says, this is what I want, this is what I need. And sometimes you can even lead the conversation with saying, look, I'm going to explain some things that are hard for you to hear. This is what I need from you first. And then maybe we can discuss further later. First, I just need you to listen. I just need you to maybe reflectively listen, say what you think you're hearing me say back to me so that I know that the message is getting across correctly. Um, and just like hold space for my feelings. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. Maybe don't ask questions yet. Maybe we can ask questions later. Whatever. Set up your structures for the conversation, your boundaries for the conversation so that ideally, if everyone cooperates, you at least get the words out and then you can kind of deal with the aftermath as it goes. Because especially with Mercury retrograde, but with life in general, it's usually not just the first hard conversation that resolves the issue. You have to have multiple conversations, and your feelings are going to change every single time you enter that conversation, and so are theirs. And you just kind of got to let that happen. Doesn't mean you got to be mean to each other and you got to start fights and it has to turn into this big thing that spirals out of control. Back to that word again. But there does need to be an effort made from both parties to like actually consciously engage in this conversation and do your best to not hurt each other. And then you can figure out what to do with the relationship after that. Period. Oh, can you believe I didn't even know what I was going to talk about today? So yeah, that's your Venus Mars opposition for the week. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat before I start to wrap up. Because I know I said a lot. I didn't get to keep up with y'all as much today, but it seems like y'all are vibing and I love the energy. So thank you for your commentary on the side. Love it when you talk to each other. Okay. Yeah. Y'all get it. Y'all get it. Mixed feelings for folks with placements in my rising, right? Because that's the thing with synastry. I'll do a synastry chat one day too, another one, but having people's planets on your planets and especially in your first house is like holding up a mirror. And it's not only holding up a mirror, but it's holding up a mirror of all the things that you don't want to acknowledge about yourself. And that's why you were attracted to that person, probably. Oh, that's so interesting. Didn't realize my Venus has the upper hand. Yes. Obviously, like Venus is in its own sign as well, but even if it were a different placement there, it's not so much that it has the upper hand, but it's kind of controlling the vibe of the T square. It's kind of like a Venus oriented T square because Venus is the thing that's going to break up the opposition between Saturn and Aquarius and Mars and Leo. Otherwise, it's just going to be Saturn and Mars beefing into perpetuity. But you have Venus there in Taurus who's being like, okay, listen, here's how this is going to work. We're going to work in service of the relationship. Okay. So whatever you're doing, Mars, and whatever you're doing, Saturn, both of you come with me. That's kind of like how that works in my mind. You're all in my business. Yeah. Y'all feel me on the lost cousin. I hate it. I hate it for me because I'm great. People should know me. You're great. People should know you. But it's hard whenever they're not really showing that they want to know you as you've decided you are. They want to know you as they've decided you are. And that just doesn't feel good. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. But we do this to each other, right? I mean, family of origin is like usually the most clear example of this, but we all do this to each other to some extent. It's like when you have a crush on someone and then you like how they say a crush is a lack of information. Crushes are so fun because they're so distant from you. You don't know them. So you can literally, they're a blank slate for you to project all of your romantic and sexual fantasies on until the closer they get, until they're right in front of your face and you're in a relationship with them 6 months later. You're like, who the fuck? Who are you? You are not the person that I thought you were. Correct. Because you didn't know who they were. You were filling in the gaps with your own ideas and your own fantasies of what you wanted them to be and what you wanted the relationship to be because you got your own wounds to figure out in this relationship. And that's okay. That's normal. But get clear, you kind of don't ever really know somebody. And part of that is because of, whatever time period you enter their life, but also because they have a whole world going back to Saturn and Aquarius. They have a whole world and concept of who they are and what life is in their own mind that you don't have access to. And so the other key here is to always, this for my people in romantic relationships, especially, and close friendships, always treat that person well, okay, with an asterisk, don't take this literally, but the more that you remind yourself that you don't fully know this person, the ins and outs and all aspects of them, the more you can stay curious about them, the stronger your relationship will be. You need that curiosity about each other for your relationship to thrive because the minute that you really think you got each other figured out, there's some mechanism in your brain that says, okay, now we got to fuck some shit up because they think they know me and they don't. We're weird like that. I don't know why we do that, but it be like that. So, yeah. Stay curious about each other. You don't know everything about each other. I guarantee it. I don't care how long you've been together. There's always something to learn. Again, not because of just whatever point you entered their life and you've learned everything about them up to that moment, but because we're always changing. We're always growing. We're always evolving. So stay curious. Stay curious, friends. Um, oh, yes. I got left out of a family dinner this weekend because I don't play with COVID. Exactly. Scorpio as fuck. One side of my family used to badger me about being single all the time, so I stopped going to their gatherings. I really don't give a damn. It was years and I finally had enough. Yeah, absolutely. Keep imposing this thing on you that you're like, no. But I'm also like, yeah, I'm glad you didn't consider me, but let's expand that imagination on what's possible. Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's so fascinating. I'm the black sheep in my family and I have to navigate this every time. Also, no one has any idea that I'm bi, and they also don't respect my kids' pronouns and I just gray rock it. Yes, exactly. You have to give back the same ignore button that they're pressing on you, the same ignore and dismiss button that they press on you. Because at some point, when nobody's changing, then nothing's changing. So why bother? Yeah. Sounds like a lot of you guys agree, especially, yeah, election stuff, having different political beliefs as well. All the girl cousins are close. It makes me sad I can't be a part of that. Yeah, y'all get it. Y'all get it. Why I put so much weight on friendships. Y'all get it. All right. Well, I need to change and get ready for work, but I am grateful that y'all were here and listened to me because I know I shared a lot today as well. And I hate that a lot of you are having a similar experience, but I'm glad that we could see each other right now and kind of be seen amongst each other in this space, if nowhere else. So at least you know that you are sane and you are valid and you are not wrong for being who you are. Oh, y'all are really in the chat. Oh my gosh, I wish I had more time. The way being I can't foresee beyond being the lost cousin with the pandemic scene. It's hard. Same here, honestly. I'm really struggling with it, but I get it. When we get curious enough to change, we have to remember that's an invitation to not be the same. So we have to pay attention to our curiosities and changes in ourselves and each other. Yes. Amen. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. And I hope y'all have a wonderful week. I will see you again next week at noon. If I decide to do something else before then, I will let you know. Stay posted. If you haven't liked the video already, like the video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so you can be notified when I go live, and follow me on all the socials, join my Patreon, do all the things. And I will see you next week. Toodaloo.